Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Bruce Lee wasn't just talking about martial arts when he spoke these words. He was describing a fundamental truth about our minds, a truth we all once knew, but most of us have forgotten. Meet Alex. At 5 years old, his mind is like water flowing, adaptable, present. Watch how completely absorbed he is building a tower of blocks. He's not worried about tomorrow's play date or regretting yesterday's spilled juice. He simply is here now. Notice how quickly emotions move through him. When his tower falls, there's a moment of surprise, perhaps disappointment. But it passes quickly like a ripple across water, and he moves on to rebuilding. His emotions flow naturally. They aren't held, analyzed, or resisted. Alex's brain is creating millions of neural connections every day, but there's a natural efficiency to this process. Thoughts and emotions arise, serve their purpose, and dissolve. Nothing is clung to or pushed away. His mind is doing what it was designed to do, processing experience without interference. This is our natural state, the mind as water. 2 years later, patterns have begun to form. Alex is learning that some emotions are acceptable and others aren't. The concrete tore into Alex's knee as he fell, the sting of the fresh wound sending a sharp signal through his nervous system. His throat tightened as tears threatened to spill. The pain was immediate, real, undeniable. "You're fine. It doesn't hurt that much," his teacher says with a hint of annoyance. Checking her watch, recess is almost over. 20 other children stare at him, waiting to see what he'll do. In that moment, something profound happens. Alex feels the gap opening between what his body is screaming and what the authority figure is telling him. In his developing brain, a neural pathway strengthens. His direct experience isn't trustworthy. If his knee hurts, but an adult says it doesn't hurt that much, maybe he can't trust his own perceptions. This is the beginning of self-doubt, the first time Alex learns to question his authentic experience. By age 9, the pattern has strengthened. When his drawing is criticized in art class, he doesn't just feel the natural disappointment. Now there is a secondary reaction, judgment about the feeling itself. I shouldn't feel bad about this. What's wrong with me? The water of his mind is beginning to freeze in certain places, losing its natural fluidity. Not because anything is wrong with Alex, but because he's learning what we all learn, that some thoughts and emotions are unacceptable. At 10 years old, Alex experienced a subtle but significant shift in his relationship with his own mind. At a family gathering, his aunt presented him with a gift, a sweater with a cartoon character he had liked when he was much younger. Alex's stomach dropped. The character, one he'd been obsessed with at age 6, now made him cringe with embarrassment. The sweater was too childish, and he could already hear the taunts from classmates if he ever wore it. His throat tightened as contradictory impulses battled, the need to protect his aunt's feelings and the visceral rejection rising inside him. His aunt leaned forward, her face glowing with anticipation. "I remembered how much you loved this character. I searched 3 stores to find it." The silence stretched uncomfortably as everyone waited for his reaction. His parents' eyes carried that familiar warning look. The air felt thick. "I love it, thank you," he exclaimed, his voice rising to an unnatural pitch. His cheeks ached from the forced smile. As he hugged his aunt, a strange sensation washed over him, as if he were watching himself perform from somewhere else. It was a small lie, seemingly insignificant. But it wasn't just a lie to his family, it was the beginning of lying to himself. Over the following days, relatives commented on the sweater, asking if he liked his gift. "Yeah, it's awesome," he'd say, pushing down his disappointment a little deeper each time. Eventually, he almost convinced himself he should be grateful for it, that his feelings of disappointment were wrong. This pattern, denying his true feelings and replacing them with what seemed acceptable, felt necessary. It kept the peace. It earned approval. It avoided the discomfort of disappointing others or appearing ungrateful. The problem wasn't that Alex showed gratitude for the gift. Expressing appreciation for others' thoughtfulness is a valuable social skill. The issue was that he began to deny his authentic feelings even to himself. He could have been polite externally while still honoring his true feelings internally. Alex could have thought, I don't really like this sweater, but I appreciate that my aunt tried to get me something she thought I'd enjoy. I can thank her sincerely for her thoughtfulness, while still recognizing my own feelings about the gift itself. Over the following years, this self-deception became increasingly automatic. When friends wanted to go to loud parties that overwhelmed him, he'd convince himself he was just being antisocial and should learn to have fun. When he felt hurt by his first girlfriend's comments, he'd tell himself he was too sensitive and needed to toughen up. Each time he denied his true experience, those authentic feelings and thoughts had to go somewhere. They didn't simply vanish, they were packed away into a mental container, what would eventually become his shadow self. This container wasn't passive. It pulsed with the energy of all those denied emotions. Sometimes a wisp of authentic feeling would leak out, a flash of unexpected anger when someone mentioned parties, a knot in his stomach when receiving a gift, only to be quickly stuffed back into the box, the lid pressed down firmly. As the years passed, this shadowy container grew denser, heavier, more alive. It developed its own subtle heartbeat. What began as a child's adaptive strategy to navigate a complex social world had evolved into something with its own power, its own will, a dissociated part of himself that grew stronger with every denial, waiting for the moment to be heard. By 14, Alex has developed specific ideas about who he is and who he should be. I'm smart, I'm bad at sports, I should be confident, I shouldn't show fear. Before a class presentation, anxiety floods his body, a normal, helpful response designed to heighten his alertness. But now there's a cascade of secondary reactions. Why am I so nervous? No one else seems nervous. I need to get rid of this feeling before people notice. He tries what seems logical, fighting the feeling. He tells himself to calm down, takes deep breaths, rehearses positive affirmations. But strangely, the more he fights the anxiety, the stronger it becomes. What Alex doesn't yet understand is that his resistance is actually strengthening the neural pathway for anxiety. The very act of fighting a thought or emotion tells his brain, this is important. Pay more attention to this. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder he pushes, the more forcefully it tries to surface. By his early 20s, Alex has developed sophisticated strategies to control his mind. He exercises to manage stress, practices positive thinking, avoids certain situations that trigger unwanted emotions. His bookshelf is lined with self-improvement titles. His phone is filled with meditation apps. He journals regularly to correct negative thinking patterns. He's doing everything right, at least according to what he's been taught. Yet, despite these efforts, or perhaps because of them, his mind feels like a battleground. The harder he works to control his thoughts and emotions, the more exhausted he becomes. It's like trying to tame a wild river by building bigger and bigger dams. Perhaps most draining of all, Alex finds himself constantly battling anticipations. Elaborate scenarios his mind creates about future events. Before a meeting with his professor, he spends hours rehearsing potential criticisms and his defenses. Before a date, he exhausts himself imagining all possible ways he might be rejected. Before family gatherings, he mentally prepares for conflicts that rarely materialize. Sometimes we spend years of our lives battling anticipations we've created about events or situations. These mental constructions feel real enough to trigger stress responses in our bodies, yet they exist only in our minds. Alex doesn't realize how much of his limited life energy is being consumed fighting these phantom futures rather than experiencing the present moment. What Alex doesn't realize is that all this control is creating a backlog in his mental processing system. His mind is designed to handle thoughts and emotions by allowing them to flow through, but he's interrupting this natural process at every turn. At 28, Alex appears successful. Good job, nice apartment, active social life. But internally, the pressure has been building. One Sunday evening, preparing for the work week ahead, something broke. It began with a tightness in his chest that he tried to ignore. Then his heart began to race, pounding against his ribs like it wanted to escape. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his palms under his arms. His vision narrowed to a tunnel, the edges darkening. I'm dying, he thought, collapsing onto the cold tile of his bathroom floor. His lungs felt like they were encased in concrete, each breath a desperate, shallow gasp. The room spun. His fingers tingled and went numb. This wasn't just anxiety, it was terror in its purest form, a primal fear that bypassed all rational thought. For 20 minutes he lay curled in a fetal position, convinced his heart would explode. When the attack finally subsided, he was left shaking, drained, and deeply confused. How could his body betray him so completely? The doctor finds nothing physically wrong, it's just anxiety, he's told, and prescribed medication. But something about this explanation doesn't satisfy Alex. How could his mind, which he's worked so hard to control, betray him so completely? This crisis sends him searching for deeper answers, not just techniques to manage symptoms, but understanding about what's happening in his mind. Why, despite all his efforts at control, does he feel more out of control than ever? A month after his panic attack, Alex stumbles upon a book in a second-hand store. What catches his attention isn't the promised benefits, reduced stress, better focus, but a single line that stops him in his tracks. What you resist persists. For the first time, he encounters a radical idea. What if his efforts to control his mind have been creating the very problems he's trying to solve? What if fighting against unwanted thoughts and emotions actually gives them more power? His first attempts at this new approach are frustrating. Years of mental habits don't disappear overnight. When anxiety arises, his instinct is still to fight it, analyze it, try to make it go away. But gradually, something shifts. He begins to notice the difference between having a thought and engaging with it, between feeling an emotion and becoming entangled in it, between observing the contents of his mind and identifying with them. As Alex practices this new relationship with his mind, he begins to rediscover something, a natural state that feels strangely familiar. Moments when his mind feels like water again, flowing around obstacles rather than crashing against them. He observes how thoughts and emotions, when not interfered with, naturally complete their cycle. They arise, peak, and fade. If he doesn't interrupt the process with resistance or rumination, it's as if his mind always knew how to process experience. He just needed to stop getting in its way. Like a river that naturally clears debris if not dammed up. His mind knows how to process thoughts and emotions if given the space to do so. In these moments, he catches glimpses of his childhood self. The mind as water that he once had naturally. The difference is that now he understands what was lost and how to find his way back. Alex's journey reflects a path many of us walk. We begin life with minds like water, present, flowing, adaptable. Life experiences teach us to freeze that water into rigid patterns. We develop sophisticated strategies to control our minds, never realizing that this control is creating our suffering. But there is a way back to the mind of water, not through more control, but through understanding how our minds actually work and learning to stop interfering with their natural processes. In part 2 of Alex's story, we'll explore the practical steps he discovered to work with his mind rather than against it. We'll learn specific techniques to create the conditions for the mind to heal itself, and how to recognize and release the patterns that keep us from our natural state. Join us next time for part 2, where we'll continue Alex's journey and discover how to apply these principles in your own life.